I built the heaven with power, and it is I who am expanding it. The expansion of the universe was first suggested by the general theory of relativity. The size of the universe appears to be progressively increasing. Imagine a book written over 1,400 years ago, in a world where science as we know it did not exist. Yet it describes intricate details of the universe, human biology, and natural phenomena with uncanny accuracy. Could it be coincidence? Or does this hint at something beyond human knowledge? Welcome to Historical Folks, where we uncover the mysteries of the past and their impact on our world today. If you love history, archaeology, and hidden truths, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we are so close to 100 subscribers and it motivates me. Enjoy the video. Before getting to the essence of the subject, there is a very important point which must be considered: the authenticity of the Quranic text. It is known that the text of the Quran was both recited from memory, during the time it was revealed, by the Prophet and the believers who surrounded him, and written down by designated scribes among his followers. This process lasted for roughly 23 years, during which many unofficial copies were made. An official copy was made within 1 year after the Prophet Muhammad's death at the instruction of Caliph Abu Bakr. From an examination of creation as described in the Quran, an extremely important general concept emerges. The Quranic narration is quite different from the biblical narration. This idea contradicts the parallels which are often wrongly drawn by Western authors to emphasize the resemblance between the two texts. To stress only the similarities, while silently ignoring the obvious dissimilarities, is to distort reality. There is, perhaps, a reason for this. When talking about creation, there is a strong tendency in the West to claim that Prophet Muhammad copied the general outlines mentioned in the Quran from the Bible. Certainly, it is possible to compare the 6 days of creation as described in the Bible, plus an extra day for rest on God's Sabbath, with this verse from chapter Al-Araf. Your Lord is God who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. Quran 7:54. However, it must be pointed out that modern commentators stress the interpretation of the Arabic word ayam, one translation of which is days, as meaning long periods or ages, rather than periods of 24 hours. What appears to be of fundamental importance to me is that, in contrast to the narration contained in the Bible, the Quran does not lay down a sequence for creation of the earth and heavens. It refers both to the heavens before the earth and the earth before the heavens, when it talks of creation in general, as in this verse of chapter Taa, God, who created the earth and heavens above. Quran. The Quran contains on certain points of astronomy. It is common for someone to reply that there is nothing unusual in this, since the Arabs made important discoveries in the field of astronomy long before the Europeans. But this is a mistaken idea resulting from an ignorance of history. In the first place, science developed in the Arab world at a considerable time after the Quranic revelation had occurred. Secondly, the scientific knowledge prevalent at the high point of Islamic civilization would have made it impossible for any human being to have written statements on the heavens comparable to those in the Quran. Whereas the Bible talks of the sun and the moon as two lights differing only in size, the Quran distinguishes between them by the use of different terms: light, Nur, for the moon, and lamp, Siraj, for the sun. Did you see how Allah created 7 heavens, one above the other, and made in them the moon a light and the sun a lamp? Quran. The moon is an inert body which reflects light, whereas the sun is a celestial body in a state of permanent combustion producing both light and heat. The word star, najm, in the Quran, is accompanied by the adjective thaqib, which indicates that it burns and consumes itself as it pierces through the shadows of the night. It was much later discovered that stars are heavenly bodies producing their own light like the sun. In the Quran, a different word, kawkab, is used to refer to the planets, which are celestial bodies that reflect light and do not produce their own light like the sun. We have adorned the lowest heaven with ornaments, the planets. Quran. Today, the laws governing the celestial systems are well known. Galaxies are balanced by the position of stars and planets in well-defined orbits, as well as the interplay of gravitational forces produced by their masses and the speed of their movements. But is this not what the Quran describes in terms which have only become comprehensible in modern times? In chapter Al-Anbiya we find, God is the one who created the night, the day, the sun, and the moon. Each one is traveling in an orbit with its own motion. The Arabic word which expresses this movement is the verb yasbahun, which implies the idea of motion produced by a moving body, whether it is the movement of one's legs running on the ground, or the action of swimming in water. In the case of a celestial body, one is forced to translate it, according to its original meaning, as to travel with its own motion. The Quranic description of the sequence of day and night would, in itself, be rather commonplace were it not for the fact that it is expressed in terms that are today highly appropriate. The Quran uses the verb kawara in chapter Az Zumar to describe the way the night winds winds, or coils itself around the day and the day around the night. He coils the night upon the day and the day upon the night. The original meaning of the verb kiss, to coil a turban around the head. This is a totally valid comparison. Yet at the time the Quran was revealed, the astronomical data necessary to make this comparison were unknown. It is not until man landed on the moon and observed the Earth spinning on its axis that the dark half of the globe appeared to wind itself around the light and the light half appeared to wind itself around the dark. The notion of a settled place for the sun is vividly described in chapter Yasin of the Quran. The sun runs its course to a settled place that is the decree of the Almighty, the All-Knowing. Settled place is the translation of the word mustaqar, which indicates an exact appointed place and time. Modern astronomy confirms that the solar system is indeed moving in space at a rate of 12 miles per second towards a point situated in the constellation of Hercules, Alpha Lyrae, whose exact location has been precisely calculated. Astronomers have even given it a name, the solar apex. Chapter 80H Theriat of the Quran also seems to allude to one of the most imposing discoveries of modern science, the expansion of the universe. I built the heaven with power, and it is I who am expanding it. The expansion of the universe was first suggested by the general theory of relativity and is supported by the calculations of astrophysics. The regular movement of the galactic light towards the red section of the spectrum is explained by the distancing of one galaxy from another. Thus, the size of the universe appears to be progressively increasing. Among the achievements of modern science is the conquest of space, which has resulted in man's journey to the moon. The prediction of this event surely springs to mind when we read the chapter Ar-Rahman in the Quran. O assembly of jinns and men, if you can penetrate the regions of the heavens and the earth, then penetrate them. You will not penetrate them except with authority. Authority to travel in space can only come from the creator of the laws which govern movement and space. The whole of this Quranic chapter invites humankind to recognize God's beneficence. Let us now return to earth to discover some of the many amazing statements contained in Quranic reflections about our own planet. They deal not only with the physical phenomena observed here on earth, but also with details concerning the living organisms that inhabit it. As in the case of everything we have discussed so far, we shall see that the Quran also expresses concepts in the field of geology that were way ahead of those current at the time of its revelation. At this point, we must ask ourselves the following question: how could an uneducated man in the middle of the desert accurately tackle so many and such varied subjects at a time when mythology and superstition reigned supreme? How could he so skillfully avoid every belief that was proven to be totally inaccurate many centuries later? This is a topic which is well known today. Consequently, the verses in the Quran that refer to the water cycle seem to express ideas that are now totally self-evident. But if we consider the ideas prevalent at that time, they appear to be based more on myth and philosophical speculation than on observed fact, even though useful practical knowledge on soil irrigation was current at that period. Let us examine, for example, the following verse in chapter Az-Zumar. Have you not seen that Allah sent rain down from the sky and caused it to penetrate the ground and come forth as springs? Then he caused crops of different colors to grow. In geology, modern science has recently discovered the phenomenon of folding which formed the mountain ranges. The Earth's crust is like a solid shell, while the deeper layers are hot and fluid, and thus inhospitable to any form of life. It has also been discovered that the stability of mountains is linked to the phenomenon of folding. The process of mountain formation by folding drove the Earth's crust down into the lower layers and provided foundations for the mountains. Let us now compare modern ideas with one verse among many in the Quran that deals with this subject. Have we not made the earth an expanse and the mountains stakes? Here, as in the case of all the other topics presented, the objective observer cannot fail to notice the absence of any contradiction to modern knowledge. More than anything else, I was struck by statements in the Quran dealing with living things, both in the animal and vegetable kingdoms, especially with regard to reproduction. I can give a few examples. I must once again stress the fact that it is only in modern times that scientific progress has made the hidden meaning of some Quranic verses comprehensible to us. Numerous translations and commentaries on the Quran have been made by learned men who had no access to modern scientific knowledge. This is the case of a verse in chapter Al-Anbiya, a part of which has already been quoted. Do the unbelievers not realize that the heavens and the earth were joined together? Then I clove them asunder, and I made every living thing out of water. Will they still not believe? This is a dramatic affirmation of the modern idea that the origin of life is aquatic. Progress in botany at the time of Prophet Muhammad was not advanced enough in any country for scientists to know that plants have both male and female parts. Nevertheless, we may read the following in the chapter Ta'aha. God is the one who sent down rain from the sky and with it brought forth a variety of plants in pairs. Today we know that fruit comes from plants that have sexual characteristics even when they come from unfertilized flowers, like bananas. In the chapter Ar-Arad we read the following: And of all fruits God placed on the earth two pairs. In the field of physiology, there is one verse which appears extremely significant to me. 1,000 years before the discovery of the blood circulatory system, and roughly 13 centuries before it was determined that the internal organs were nourished by the process of digestive, a verse in the Quran described the source of the constituents of milk, in conformity with scientific facts. This verse is taken from the chapter An-Nahl. Verily, in cattle there is a lesson for yawn. I give you drink from their insides, coming from a conjunction between the digested contents of the intestines and the blood, milk pure and pleasant for those who drink it. This very precise concept is the result of the discoveries made in the chemistry and physiology of the digestive system over 1,000 years after the time of Prophet Muhammad. There are a multitude of statements in the Quran on the subject of human reproduction which constitute a challenge to the embryologist seeking a human explanation for them. It was only after the birth of the basic sciences which contributed to our knowledge of biology and the invention of the microscope that humans were able to understand the depth of those Quranic statements. It was impossible for a human being living in the early 7th century to have accurately expressed such ideas. There is nothing to indicate that people in the Middle East and Arabia knew anything more about this subject than people living in Europe or anywhere else. Today, there are many Muslims, possessing a thorough knowledge of the Quran and natural sciences, who have recognized the amazing similarity between the verses of the Quran dealing with reproduction and modern scientific knowledge. We shall always remember the comment of an 18-year-old Muslim, brought up in Saudi Arabia, commenting on a reference to human reproduction as described in the Quran. He pointed to the Quran and said, "This book provides us with all the essential information on the subject. When I was at school, my teachers used the Quran to explain how children were born. Your books on sex education are a bit late on the scene. Let us now isolate, from all these verses, precise ideas concerning the complexity of the semen and the fact that an infinitely small quantity is required to ensure fertilization." In chapter Al-Insan, the Quran states, "Verily, I created humankind from a small quantity of mingled fluids." The Arabic word nutfa has been translated as small quantity. It comes from the verb meaning to dribble, to trickle, and is used to describe what remains in the bottom of a bucket which has been emptied. The verse correctly implies that fertilization is performed by only a very small volume of liquid. On the other hand, mingled fluids, amshaj, has been understood by early commentators to refer to the mixture of male and female discharges. Modern authors have corrected this view and note that the sperm is made up of various components. When the Quran talks of a fertilizing fluid composed of different components, it also informs us that human progeny will be formed from something extracted from this liquid. This is the meaning of the following verse in chapter Az-Sajda. "Then he made man's offspring from the essence of a despised fluid." The Arabic word translated by the term essence is salala, which means something extracted, the best part of a thing. In whatever way it is translated, it refers to part of a whole. Under normal conditions, only one single cell, spermatozoon, out of over 50 million ejaculated by a man during sexual intercourse will actually penetrate the ovule. As for the biblical genealogies which form the basis of the Jewish calendar and assert that today the world is 5,738 years old, these are hardly admissible either. Our solar system may well be 4.25 billion years old, and the appearance of human beings on Earth, as we know him today, may be estimated in tens of thousands of years, if not more. It is absolutely essential, therefore, to note that the Quran does not contain any such indications as to the age of the world, and that these are specific to the biblical text. How did these scientific facts find their way into a book revealed in the 7th century? Was it simply chance, or is there something more profound at play? Whatever your beliefs, these verses raise an intriguing question. Could the Quran be containing knowledge beyond its time? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into historical mysteries, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible discoveries from history.